Hello again, it's Graham. Welcome to the big interview. And please let me tell you about Alistair Dick, because unlike all our other episodes, I guess that many of you probably don't know Ali's name. And I want to make sure that you don't skip over this interview. As you listen to this, hopefully just before the second leg of Spurs against Ajax, here is a footballer whose links are directly to those two great clubs. As a kid, Ali was an electrifying talent, a winger who had his pick of all the top clubs in Britain and eventually chose Spurs. He tells us about why. Ali was a UEFA Cup winner with Tottenham. He came off the bench in that 1984 final against Anderlecht, which was won on penalties so dramatically, but ended the match unable to run at all due to really badly damaged ligaments. How's your luck? He was then signed by Johan Cruyff at Ajax to play in the same team as Marco Van Basten, Frank Rijkaard, the emerging Danny Blind, and a certain young thruster called Dennis Bergkamp. Those names you do know. The reason that Ali's name is less well known generally, particularly in comparison to those world-class teammates, is that he suffered a debilitating series of injuries which punctuated his very short career as an elite soccer player. Enjoy. Because as we record, your birthday was yesterday, and although he's passed away now a couple of years, so was Johan Cruyff's birthday yesterday. How the heck does the world work that a Scot from Stirling is good enough for Johan Cruyff to phone him up and sign him, and you share the same birthday? Do you not find that a little bit mental?
I tell you what, I did find it mental. I think the first year I was there, he actually had his 40th birthday party, and he invited everybody out to his house. He had a house in the country. Kind of a lot of people only found out after about an hour or so it was my birthday. So I was actually in Johan Cruyff's house for his 40th. I think it was my 21st, celebrating. And that was a bit weird. That was one of the times I kind of sat back and thought, geez. Because one of my earliest memories of football is watching the 1974 World Cup with a nice colour TV, which is...
That was doing well
in 1974. My dad came in with a big pot, family-size ice cream for the family, sat down and watched the telly, and it was all about Cruyff. And I was thinking, geez, that's what you want. That's what you want to be like when you grow up. You want to be one of these guys that people go to pay to go watch. And at the time, he was head and shoulders above everybody. And then I was only 9 then. So to think that years later, you'd be sat in front of him talking about contracts and he'd be telling me what to do, that's kind of weird.
Well, we share, I think probably I'm a bit more romantic and emotional about it, partly because I didn't have the talent to take me to the stage that you got to. But in my wee world, I was sitting watching that same game as you, a few hundred miles north in Aberdeen, literally falling head over heels in love with that type of football and thinking, I'd never, as much as I'm an Aberdeen man through and through, I'd never seen anybody who seemed to glide across a pitch and seemed to emanate elegance. And he looked like, you know, he could have been Elvis or he could have been Boer, or, you know, with the silhouette, the haircut, I'm above all this, but I'll mix it with you, I have to. And I end up meeting him, knowing him, and doing the last ever public interview that he did, and I'm sitting there then, as, you know, little did I know 7 days later he'd announced that he had throat cancer. And you know, I've thought how weird the world is that a writer from Aberdeen can end up sitting across from his hero in front of an audience in Berlin. I start to think, you know, is the world actually meant to work this way? I didn't quite feel out of place, but at least you had the skill that attracted him to you.
I keep having to remind myself about that. Sometimes you go through, you always doubt yourself. And you think, geez, out of all the... And those were the days you were only allowed 2 foreigners. So it wasn't like, we'll buy 10, we'll stick 8 on the bench and we'll chuck a couple on. It was a 2 foreigner rule. And it was kind of out of nowhere. It just totally came out of nowhere. If it was any other foreign club, I would have maybe left it for a few years. But when Ajax come in and Johan Cruyff, you think yourself, Jesus, it's too good to be true. It
really
almost
doesn't get better than this.
And the guy, you're talking about him there, kind of romanticising it. He was like a godlike figure almost in Amsterdam. And we used to go away European trips to Turkey and Sweden, wherever. And you'd walk off the plane, nobody would bother about Marco Van Basten, Frank Rijkaard, Cruyff, the crowd just went phew, everywhere he went. They just kind of followed him. They hung on every word, and he definitely had an aura about him.
For me, in the history of the world that we've lived in, you and I at this age, Sinatra, Muhammad Ali, George Best, Elvis, some people just seem to be given everything and more. And it's about every action, every word, how they dress, how they speak, as well as whatever it is that they're good at, and add that. But in storytelling, modern storytelling style, having done a little prologue, the two of us now, let me go back to the beginning, because you're not only young at heart, but you're still a young man, but I'm an oldie, and therefore what I've learned is that people don't remember all the things that you and I saw or lived.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So let's establish, you're Ali Dick, born in Stirling, born with a tremendous gift for football. I mean, really something special, very special. And one of the reasons that we've timed our long-standing wish to sit down and chat to you about your skills in your life is that two of your clubs are playing each other in the Champions League semi-final, much to everybody's surprise, because you starred for Spurs and won a European medal there. You starred for Ajax and won a couple of European medals there. But for those, say, who are 19, 20 or even 30, the Swines, and never saw you play or don't understand, I want you don't have to close your eyes and think, but what were you as a player? Describe yourself.
When I was about, I say 9, 10, 11, I realised then, if I was around the park, if somebody kicked a ball at me from 100 yards away, without ever doing it before, without anybody coaching me, without anything, I could trap it on my chest, caress it down, put it on at my left peg, and I could have volley it back that 100 yards. Everything was very natural for me. I was never ever coached when I was young. Everything I'd done, it was all natural ability. And at that age, it kind of stands out a lot. I've took a couple of young teams myself, and looking back, you think, when I was their age, I could do a lot more than them. I was so much advanced for my age. I was only small, I was only slight. Lucky enough, I was very fast. So if I ever played, the opposition instructions were always kick him, which I kind of enjoyed. I liked that kind of notoriety that I was the one that you should kick. I loved all that. I always wanted to be the football player that people would come and pay to watch. Never interested me to be one of those guys that sat in at the back, kind of never went forward.
Organising, working.
Aye, shouting a lot, organising.
Sweating, blue collar.
Aye, it never interested me. I always wanted to be the guy who people paid to go and see. The guy that kind of done something a wee bit different. The guy that was always going forward. The guy that was always trying something a wee bit different. And because I was kind of way advanced for my years, ability-wise, I got allowed to do it. Any team I was in, they just said basically do what you want.
Give it to Ali.
Aye, so I was given a lot of freedom, and that was right up till I was about 16. Even like you talk about Walter and Andy Roxburgh, even they guys gave me a lot of freedom. They never bogged me down with tactics. That only came when you become professional and it gets a bit more serious. But up until then, I wasn't coached very heavily. I was tactically very naive. Any game I ever played, they basically just gave me the jersey. Says, Al, go do your stuff. And that was all I needed. Up until I was about 16, it was all very easy.
When that realisation, because we must skip forward to Spurs quite quickly, but when that even though you're only 9, 10, 11, that realisation that you can do special things that almost nobody else around you growing up, although you grow up in an area rich in tradition for producing footballers, even in a school rich in tradition, and I think probably the most famous apart from you would be Billy Bremner, who's from this neck of the woods. Did you ever stop and think, is this a divine gift, or where does this come from? Why can I just do this?
You don't really, you go through your career doubting yourself. I can do this, but you kind of harbour on your inabilities, the things you can't do. I was never the fittest. I was any place I ever went. Not only was I not fit, I was like always the worst one. I was never the guy who could run all day and
You're
get
talking
back.
about stamina, are you? Or
Aye, stamina and match fitness. I could run, I could sprint, I could beat anybody, but the stamina thing, I never had that. And those were the things that you that goes through your head. Not what you can do, it's all the things you can't do.
I get that. So we'll focus, given the fact that you did star for both Spurs and Ajax, and that they're about to compete to be in the Champions League final, European Cup final, thing that Spurs have never achieved, and Ajax crave getting back to, because, you know, not that far from your time, just before and just after, they were regular winners of that competition. So when we focus on the things you could do and what people liked about you, Spurs come knocking, and we're aware that at that stage, there really was a queue for your services. I'd say almost, the young Ali Dick at 16 could probably, on turning professional, you could almost take your pick. That's fair to say.
Yep.
So why Spurs? What were the things, the phone call or the image of the club, or who was playing there, or was there another club that you nearly joined that let you down? Why Spurs?
That's an easy one. Ever since I was, say, even 13, 14, I used to get phone calls every night. Every month, I would maybe fly down to Aston Villa one weekend. I'd play with their youth team. I'd come back up the next week. I would fly down, play with Crystal Palace, play in their youth team for a couple of games. Always me and my dad would go down.
Just for those who don't remember, Aston Villa at that stage that you were flying down were just about European champions. Yep. At the time that you're flying out to Crystal Palace, they were called the team of the 80s.
Terry Venables was there.
Was in charge right at the top.
Yep.
Two hugely exciting clubs at that time.
Yep.
But they weren't alone, there was more.
No, there was plenty of clubs, and I'd used to go, and I'd go to every club. My manager, when I was young, says, don't come out, don't sign S forms at the time, don't sign with Celtic, anything like that. I used to train with Celtic every Tuesday, but I always refused to sign with them, because it's not going to do me any benefit. I can still train with them. S form's just going to tie me down. So that was another thing that worked in my favour. For years I had this anticipation building because I hadn't signed with anybody, which is quite unusual at the time. And I never felt the urge, and it afforded me the luxury of going to every club, and I'd go here, I'd go there. In the off-season, I'd go trips with teams, and a couple of times I went away with Tottenham. I went away with a youth team. I went to a tournament in Switzerland. The following week, they would fly me down for a first-team game. Keith Burtonshaw would bring me on the bus. I was only maybe 15 at the time. He'd put me on the bus with the first team. We'd travel to the game.
So the first team then was, as a 15-year-old, who are you saying, move up there, I'll give me a seat to?
Oh, Glenn Hoddle, Steve Archibald, Ozzy Ardiles,
Perryman.
Stevie Perryman. You're listening to them talk before the game. You're in the changing room beforehand. Even the youth team players at Tottenham, they never got that kind of luxury. But obviously, they're trying to impress me, and they used to let me sit on the bench. I could hear the team talk. It was always fun. They always just included me. They always had a laugh. They always talk about family club, family atmosphere. It definitely was a family atmosphere. Although they treated me very special, at the same time, they just kept my feet on the ground. Tottenham was the place I had the most fun.
Who are the people that are giving you this fun, though? Because Burtonshaw was the Yorkshireman, pretty blunt, quite hard in his demands on people. And are you talking about the senior pros or the?
Nobody in particular, just the whole vibe about the club. When I played with the youth team, the boys would be a good laugh, and then maybe that following. I'd play in the youth team in the morning, then you go play in the reserve for maybe 30 minutes, get a bit of experience. I'd always go under an assumed name, because you weren't allowed to be in England when you were from Scotland,
under 16. You don't remember any of them, do you? Did you get to make them up?
I normally picked somebody who wasn't playing that day. Right. I went under his name.
You couldn't sign in as Roger Moore or Tony Curtis or anything like that?
No. And everybody was just nice. The taxi driver used to pick me up at the airport. The youth team coach, Keith Burtonshaw, he was very keen on me, and he was always encouraging me to play in the first team and help me as much. So just the vibe I got off it was always good.
Was it also a place where skill and flair were encouraged? Did you become aware of the fact that it was probably a fit with your skills?
At the time, I wasn't aware of that. It was only before I joined. I decided maybe about 6 months previous I was going to join Spurs. I never really told anybody about my decision. Just me and my dad knew just in case anything changed. But it was then when I kind of researched it a bit, I realised that it was probably a good club for me as well, with kind of the focus on skills and the focus on nice football.
The gym famously had those circles and squares on the wall that you had to volley back and forward from. And had you sampled that?
The old ball court. It was all concrete ball court. I used to play up there. And I was only later on that I realised that it was a team who are renowned for playing nice football. And
so an easy choice.
It was a good choice. That wasn't the reason I chose it, but it kind of fell in nice. And I think a year or two before that, they were even in the second division. They'd only just recently got promotion. The week that I joined was, remember that Ricky Villa goal?
In the cup final.
That was
against City.
That was when I joined.
You're literally finally making your mind up on the night of it'd be a replay of the FA Cup final in probably about, I don't know, 81 maybe, or 80?
81. I'd made my mind up about maybe 4 weeks before that. Me, my dad and my brother, they flew us down to the FA Cup final. That night, although it was a draw, they had the big function in the Dorchester Hotel. And I met Danny Blanchflower.
Whoa.
Bill Nicholson was there. I knew
Two of the club's biggest legends ever. Bill Nick, that won the double with Spurs as a manager.
Bill Nick used to come up quite a bit to my house. He was
up to Stirling?
Yeah. He was the head scout at the time.
That's equivalent to being in Cruyff's house on his 40th birthday, because Bill Nick is one of the all-time legends of...
See, I didn't know at the time. I didn't know it. He was just the old guy that he was always nice.
Sue features in your story. Suey's a fellow guest on this series, and Suey, sure of himself, ultra sure of himself, hard man, very talented. But in the podcast interview we did with him, he grimaced at his memory of going and banging on Bill Nicholson's door. So why am I not in the team and not as a brash young Scot?
Right.
And looking back, he's like, oh my God, did I actually do that to the Bill Nick? So for him to be coming up to try and persuade you up to your house, that was a gesture of extraordinary faith in you.
He was such a nice man. I'm actually in Bill Nicholson's book. I get a nice little review in his book. And as I say, the first FA Cup, it was a draw.
Tommy Hutchinson own goal late, I think off his chest.
That was the one.
Free
That
kick,
was the one. Now, me, my dad and my brother were there. They had the big function in the Dorchester. It was a bit kind of muted because it was...
I shouldn't interrupt, but so Wembley, is this before or after you've taken Wembley by storm with Scotland?
This is after.
So you've played on that pitch and beaten England 5-4 in the schoolboys game, and now you're being seduced by Spurs and taken down to sit and watch the FA Cup final. Wembley must have felt quite a special place to you when you went back.
It was all pretty normal at the time. 1 week I was...
It's easy for you to say.
Yeah, but I was... I don't know if, say, for example, if I went to Aston Villa, they'd play a bounce game and it was at Villa Park. And then the following week, maybe I'd be playing at Loftus Road and I'd maybe come back up here and I'd go play at Pittodrie or something. I was always doing nice things. People were always taking me and whining and dining. Well, I was only a kid, but whining and dining my dad and I obviously try to impress. So it was kind of normal at the time. I never thought much of it. And I say that night we were at the Dorchester. Nobody had won. It was a draw, so the replay was still to come. So it was a kind of half-hearted affair. They invited me down for the replay on the Thursday. Me, my dad and my brother again, but my dad was working. It was a bit too much, so we never bothered. But that was the kind of week. I decided to join just a few weeks before that. And all that happened afterwards. It all fell in nicely. They became kind of very much high profile then with the goal. Then they won the FA Cup the following year. Then they won the UEFA Cup. I was very lucky to join at such a time.
The right time.
Can
I share something that, you played with, you've mentioned Steve Archibald. Steve lives in Barcelona, he's a friend of mine, he's another guest on the series. So I said to him, tell me about Ali. And he went, George Best. He went, I'm not saying he had the same level of talent as George Best, but the first time I saw him, his balance, his movement, the way he could show people one way, go the other, the whole body shape he had when he was on the ball, he went, just immediately reminded me of George Best. I said, that's extraordinary praise.
I've had a few people tell me that. I wish they would tell me at the time. As I say, you always kind of doubt yourself. I was kind of joining the first team when I was 16, like going on the bench, going on the trips with them. And I was very quiet and you'd be sitting and you'd be scared to talk. But if a few of the guys, if they told me that at the time, maybe my confidence would have been boosted a bit quicker. because as I say, you always doubt yourself. I was always small. I was always worried about getting kicked. I was always worried about lasting a game, and as I say, it was all those things that go through your mind, not the good things.
Really, really surprised, because I've met you subsequently, talked to you subsequently, and you don't give off any of those
On the
self-doubts.
field, I wasn't. Once I got on the field, especially if I had a crowd, then that was me. I kind of puffed up my chest, and that was me. It was off the field. There was a lot of time off the field training. I hated training. I was never the best trainer. Absolutely hated it. And that's when the kind of the grind's
Maybe a little
done.
demon comes into your head.
You just kind of think, I'm not as kind of strong as this guy.
But Spurs liked you, and you made it, and you were respected. So, for those, paint a picture of who you saw when you went down. Paint a picture for those who've maybe heard about Ricky or Ozzy. Ozzy would have been there some of the time and not some of the time with you because of the Falklands, when him and Ricky felt they had to go home to Argentina, but came back. So you know, pick the characters you want, but paint the picture of the people or the footballers you trained with and played with. Who stands out?
The very first day I went to Tottenham, I walked in to the old ticketing office. It's still the old building, it's still there. And they showed me in and said, "I'll come in here, just wait a while." And as I walked in, Ozzy Dealers was sitting on the desk, just casually. He was reading, I think he was reading his fan mail. And guy says, "Ozzy, this is Alistair, he's joining us," and had a wee chat. And it was, you kept on seeing these guys on the telly, all of a sudden he's right in front of you.
Because 3 years earlier he'd won the World Cup with Argentina.
Exactly, and he was very recognisable. And these are the days before every game was on TV and all that. But he was one face that everybody knew, and he was just sitting very casually, had a little casual talk. And it was kind of...
How was his English then? Mixed?
Very basic. And I was only a little 16-year-old guy. I wasn't for talking. I was kind of in a wee shell. So I was just kind of walking about.
Was it Ozzy or was it Mr. Ardiles? What was it? What would you think? Because there'd be a debate.
I don't think it came to that point where I had to refer to him. He got introduced as Ozzy. Everything was very casual. And it was very much, this is Ozzy, this is the tea lady, this is the man who gives you the tickets. This is Keith Burtonshaw, now you're going in the team bus, there's Steve Archibald, Archie, go look after Ali. Oh, where are you from? And it was very much relaxed, and that's what made it nice and comfortable for me.
What was so training for the first time, finding, I can do what they can do, or the first game, again, take us into that.
The very first training day with Tottenham, as a professional football player, I went up for a 50-50, Graham Roberts came in, bang, headed me in the temple, and I was kind of left on my back, dizzy, thinking, oh man, what's happening here? It was like welcome to professional football almost.
No quarter asked or given.
No, that was it. That was a kind of rude awakening. But I was used to getting kicked. It never ever bothered me. I was expecting to get kicked every game. I did get kicked every game. I could tell there was that little air about the place about, oh, this is a guy who's came from Scotland. This is a guy that everybody wanted. This is a guy that we got, and there's a wee bit of pressure on you.
So the eyes, you feel that there's a focus on you.
Sometimes you did. Not always. They were very good at just playing everything down. I never felt like they were putting any pressure on me or nothing like that. Any pressure was put on myself.
What about it's quite famous that they trained quite full on, even the day before a game was the practice matches.
Tottenham. I wouldn't say they trained full on, no.
No, so the practice matches were...
Practice matches, they would play on a Friday.
Yeah.
They would set up the first team, and then they would set up the reserves as Queen's Park Rangers or as Liverpool were going to play. The games were quite intense because there were the times when the guys found out who was in the first team. The guys found out they weren't playing. So the guys that were maybe in the reserves playing, acting as Liverpool, that's when they kind of got a little bit needly.
If you did the guy that was taking your place, then maybe you'd take his place the next day.
Well, that's when they kind of, a few of them, you could tell they weren't happy at not being in the other team. And it was always a good indication of what's happening that week, what's going to happen next week. You know, whether you're going to be involved, whether you're not going to be in the subs bench or something. It was always a good indicator. But it wasn't too full on. Sometimes it was, but it was pretty much relaxed.
I suppose the obvious question is Hoddle. Describe what it's like watching him, because
he was fantastic. He was good. And when you say talking about full on, I remember a few times guys kicked him in those games. The manager was like, "Oh man, just look, do whatever you want, but don't kick Glenn," because he kind of held everything together. He was fantastic, and those practice games on a Friday afternoon, maybe 20 minutes each way. He was relaxed. He could do all the tricks: left foot, right foot, pinging it, free kicks. He'd done absolutely everything. He was just fantastic, and you couldn't help but just sit back and think, I'll never be like that. And even guys like Ozzy and Steve Archibald, even you hear him say, "Geez, Glenn, what's he like?" He was just so good, so technically gifted. And I always remember he'd be facing that way. He'd be facing out the right wing, and you'd be out the left wing. You think, "I'm not going to run. He doesn't see me," and he'd cut the ball back with his right peg right in front of you. You think, how did he know that?
How did he see me? How did it get here?
And I learned not to second guess him. I learned always to go for it, because he could find you no matter where you were.
Do the thing you thought was the right thing, because whether you thought he was looking or not,
Yeah.
if it was the right thing, he'd put it there
He
for
could
you.
find you. He could find you anywhere. Short, long, right peg, left peg, inside the foot, outside the foot. He was a fantastic player.
What kind of man was he?
I got on very well with him. I thought he was very nice, very kind of polite, family guy.
Mickey Hazard always drew my eye. Different kind of player, but full of character and noisy.
Yeah.
Loves a sing-song, which I admire always. But also a dribbler, somebody who seemed to want the fun of maybe, I'll do you and I'll do you again, and then I'll offload the ball.
I mean, Mick was as good as anybody.
Yeah.
He was fantastic. The very first time I went to Tottenham, I stayed in digs, the same digs as him. He was at, and I was very close with Mick, because it was kind of similar. He was always like on the edge of the first team. Very difficult when you got Glenn Hoddle in the team. It was tough for Mick, because he's a very similar type of player. Any other team he went to, Mick would have been the star. But he was just unfortunate he was there when Glenn Hoddle was there. But Mick, he was fantastic. In the change room before the game, I always remember he used to keep you up with a 5p piece or a 10p piece, catch it on his neck, and he was always ready first. He was kind of hyper. He was like a school kid. And Ian Cruyff was another one, but again, limited chance to get in the first team because of Glenn Hoddle. But Glenn was definitely special. Even and amongst Ozzy dealers and they type of guys, he stood out.
When I was with Mickey Hazard not a couple of months ago in Barcelona, when Spurs came over to play in a group game, and what was patent was that he's in love with the club, literally head over heels in love with the club. Is that something you can understand and explain from your overall experience there?
I think I'd be the same as Mick. When I first went to Tottenham, in my head, that was me. I was going to be there from 16 to 36. There was no reason why I would leave. In my head, a couple of years getting used to it, playing, kind of becoming a regular, becoming one of the guys that played 500 games or whatever. That's the way I planned it in my head. And I think Mick was the same. And any time I've been to a few five-a-side games, I've been to watch Tottenham, Mick's always there. You guarantee Mick's going to be there.
It's in his blood.
I
love that.
I think I'd be the same. I think if I was still living in London, I would be exactly the same.
So take us to, when you establish yourself, that 84 UEFA Cup run is dramatic, it's special, and albeit that you come on as a sub and there's a tale to tell about that too. What do you remember of that European run? Because one, the idea of so young winning a European trophy must have been a sensational feeling. And two, whenever Steve Archibald talks to me about the old White Hart Lane and the Shed, which is, I don't know if people listening, apart from Spurs fans, even know what the Shed is, but he loved the atmosphere. He loved the way in which the fans were hungry, not only for a certain brand of football, but for European glory. So that year, 83-84, must have felt exceptional. Bring me some feel for that triumph.
I always remember we always had a full house. There was like 44,000 people at all these European games. And I always remember I got picked to play in the Bayern Munich game. The first leg was away. I actually played at the Olympic Stadium.
1-0 to them, eh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. And it was like minus 10 degrees. And at the time, I think I was only 18 at the time. But I always, the one thing I remember about that was the bonus. About that month in my wages, it was just like the usual, and boom, I had this big bonus. I went out and bought myself a car. So that was the start of the start of the European run was I bought myself a car on the strength of one game. And I thought, this will do for me.
Can you remember what car it was?
It was an XR3, a red XR3.
Did it just feel
And
like...
I was only 17, and I had a few bonuses, but this was like massive. This was in the thousands. I thought, right, I'm not going to invest this one. I'm going to blow it. I bought a car, but I was always, because you're allowed 5 subs in, for some reason I was just lucky. The European games came at a time when I was fit, I was playing well, I got picked, and I was getting on. Before the final, about 6 weeks before it, I got injured. And I remember leading up to the final, I don't know why, but I kind of got the feeling that they were trying to get me fit for the final. It was coming towards the end of the season, but the physio was on at me, and the physio was like, come, we need to get you fit, and you need to get fit. So I kind of knew that they were trying to get me fit for the final. Maybe that was just in my head. So I kind of knew that I was going to be involved at some point. I don't know why, I just had this feeling. And I worked really hard to get fit. I was so hyped up about that final, and as probably what you're going to say next, when I came on, within 5 minutes, I tore the ligament in my knee. I fell over a divot and bent my knee back, and all that adrenaline just kind of overcame me, and it was a wee bit disappointing, but it was a great night, and those European nights were packed to the kind of rafters.
Oh, you've underplayed it, Ali. Because I know you're a born storyteller, and you've been too humble. Because, of course we're trying to get you fit. Because on Wednesday the 7th of December, having lost 1-0 in Bavaria, Ray Clements, Danny Thomas, Gary Stevens, Graham Roberts, Chris Hughton, Stevie Perryman, and the names just roll off the tongue. Hoddle, Ali Dick, Mark Falco, Richard Cook, Stevie Archibald, and there was a couple of subs, O'Reilly and Brooke, came on, and you beat Bayern Munich 2-0. You're talking about Pfaff, the Belgian goalkeeper, Flugler, Augenthaler, Soren Lerby, one of the best Danes ever. I mean, again, the names just go on and on and on. Dremler, both Rummenigge brothers, Dieter Hoeneß, Udo Lattek was the coach. You beat an extraordinary Bayern Munich side 2-0, and that must have been a wonderful, night, wonderful feeling. And you played for over an hour, and no wonder they wanted you fit for the final.
Mm-hmm. You say it like that. See, at the time, it doesn't feel like that. At the time, it's just another game. You have to actually sit back and think, Jesus, Caroline's Rummenigge. I remember chasing a ball back, and it was Caroline's Rummenigge I was chasing the ball with. I thought, I'd seen him in the World Cup not that long ago. It's just kind of weird. And you kind of have to pinch yourself.
Because like Ozzy, he was very identifiable. As much as football wasn't on the TV then, very identifiable
Very
face,
much so, yeah.
Blonde, flash of hair, aggressive, quick. A world-class footballer, but a brutal competitor, captain, leader.
The Germans were, I always remember, they were big, they were strong, they were tough. And you think, you're never going to beat this team. But, we had a fantastic team. So the one thing at Tottenham, we had such a good team spirit. As I say, that kind of, when I arrived there,
the family thing you're talking about.
Everybody was friendly, everybody got on with each other. And throughout that cup run, that was still going on. It was always a nice vibe. And any club that I've ever been to that's been successful, they've had that similar vibe. It's when you get that kind of in-house bickering, that's when clubs kind of stop playing well.
I suppose you fitted in a tradition because there'd been John White way before your time, but Kilzeen as well. Only 10 years before you. Stevie was already there. I think they liked the flair Scottish players at White Hart Lane.
Yeah, and they definitely allowed you to play. They never kind of stifled you too much with defensive duties and things like that. And before a game, even the UEFA Cup final, they basically just says, Al, go on left wing, do your stuff, get down the wing, get it in the box. There's none of this kind of going through the team with tactics. So I went to Ajax. If we played any game, even a second division team, they would talk about the opposition for an hour beforehand. This guy does that, we want you to run here, we want you to tuck back here, we want you to go. Not Tottenham. Tottenham was basically...
Really, just go out and entertain, just go out and be natural, play.
The Stevie Perman would say, I'll give it to Hod. Hod, you do your thing. I'll keep looking for the ball off Hod. When you get it, do your stuff. It was all adrenaline based. And
Did that help you? Did that make it all more relaxed?
I thought that was normal. I thought that's how every team was. Any team I'd ever played for, that's what they used to do with me. So it was kind of normal. All skillful guys, all kind of off the cuff. Never got bogged down with tactics. If there were tactics, there were very few, very precise.
So on the bench, looking at, so Anderlecht is the final, and it's brutally tight, and it'll go to penalties. Watching it, are you dying to get on? Are you scared to get on? What was
the lead up to that game? I kind of, in my head, I thought, I'm going to come on. They're going to cross it. I'm going to hit it in a volley, score in the last minute with a lovely volley, and everybody has that kind of pivotal moment. And I thought, I had a feeling that this was geared for me.
almost like a vision?
Almost. I had such a good feeling, such a good vibe. And any time I had those kind of vibes, it always kind of came true, or you'd have a good game or something. And I kind of knew that I was going to do well that night. Unfortunately, I got injured pretty early. But the lead up to that, I was so hyped up. I was getting fit. I was strong. I was fast. And I was very keen. And I thought, when I get on, I'm going to really kind of go for it.
Top corner.
And I kind of knew that I would get on. I thought, I'll definitely get a chance. And I'd played a few games previous, and I was getting kind of used to playing in the first team. Everything was going well. And then...
But like, when you talk about the injury, it genuinely was a bad one, wasn't it? I mean, how bad was it? How much pain were you in? Why didn't you come off?
Well, there were only two subs. I was the second. Ozzy Ardiles was the first sub that came on. I came on second. So once I got injured, I was kind of waving at the bench, and nothing. Just stay on, stay out there. I couldn't move. I couldn't run, because every time I was running, my leg was giving way. It was kind of going back on itself. Kind of, you're tempted to do it, but at the same time, my leg's going to snap off here.
The penalty shot was a bit epic, with a couple of misses. Morten Olsen missed as well, and just when Spurs were out to win it, Danny Thomas missed, and then Eidur Gudjonsson's dad
missed.
Arnar misses. If it had come round to you to take a penalty, did you think about that on the night?
I thought about it before the game, and I thought, you don't want to be the guy who misses a penalty. I was still young, I wasn't brimming with confidence then. I don't know if I'd put my hand up for a penalty. As you say, unless it came all the way around, you'd have to. I thought, I'll leave that to the big guys at the
But if
moment.
it come all the way around and you were on one leg?
We never expected penalties. It all kind of happened so quick. And I know even some of the boys, we were standing back when they missed their last penalty. Some of the guys never realised that we'd won it. If you see the video, and you can see some of the guys thinking, we've still got to score.
They haven't done the counting.
They hadn't done the counting, and it was only a few of them who thought, we've won. A little delayed reaction.
Take us into the dressing room. How do Spurs celebrate a European trophy, seeing as they're only maybe 3 matches away from one again now? How do Spurs celebrate when they lift the European
Exactly
trophy?
as you would expect to be. There were bottles of champagne getting flung everywhere. There was people coming in, the chairman, goodness knows who they were, but people were all coming in. The dressing room, which was only small, was jam-packed. There was champagne flying everywhere. Everybody was singing and dancing. It was chaos, absolute chaos.
Do you remember lifting the trophy? Is it a buzz, or the moment when you get to lift it up out on the pitch, when you get the medal, do those stay with you, or is it just a blur?
I remember after it, walking around the pitch, everything kind of calmed down. It was packed, 44,000 in Tottenham, and the crowd was right up against the pitch. They had the fence, those were the days they had the fence, but the crowd were right on top of you. And they were flinging scarves on. I was picking up all these scarves, and that's when you could kind of take it in a little bit more. But it doesn't kind of dawn on you the enormity of it until later. And when I came off, first I said to physio, what will I do? And he says, look, come in tomorrow, don't worry about that now. Come in tomorrow and we'll sort it out.
We're partying tonight.
Exactly.
Was the family there?
My mum and dad was there. My mate came down from Scotland. I ended up going out with him that night, limping around. And then when I came in the next day, they checked it straight to hospital up in London. And that night I had an operation. And then from that, I was 6 weeks in plaster. So you came from such a high to boom, in plaster.
There goes your summer.
And you think, when you're young, you think, oh man, it looks terrible. It wasn't the worst injury of all, but at the time, you think, geez, as you say, that's my summer holidays gone.
What do you, I mean, for as much as you're able to see them, what do you think of the modern Spurs? Is it a surprise to you that they're in this semi-final?
A little bit. If you'd asked me at the beginning of the season, I wouldn't have thought so. They're a good team, and Tottenham, they've always said that they can win any cup. And even when I was there, we always thought we'd win the cup. FA Cups, UEFA Cup, we plan to win it. But when we came to the league, you kind of, back of your mind, you can accept that you maybe not win it or second, but you'll be close.
There or thereabouts would be good enough.
Yeah, and that was the kind of vibe. I'm sure now they'll be thinking they can win it.
Who stands out for you? Who do you like watching Spurs?
I like watching Ericsson.
Why?
He's just these type of guys. Something can happen any time. Every time he gets the ball, he'll look up. He's looking for passes. He's looking for a shot. It's only when he's got nothing on that he'll give the ball sideways. So I like players like that. As you say, guys that you pay money to go watch.
I like synchronicity. I'm not sure if you feel quite the same as me, but it's odd that we've got a friend in common, and that friend in common is looking after Victor Wanyama. He's his representative in the heart of that Spurs. And Victor's actually the type of player where you're saying, well, that's not who I'd pay to watch. But my personal opinion is that his reappearance from an awful season with a knee problem gives Spurs middle, particularly that they're going to be missing Kane and Son in the first leg at home against Ajax. I really think Victor gives an organisation, a brain, a distribution,
he's
a
a
ball.
tough guy. He's very tough. He doesn't look it. He's quietly enforcing things in the middle. I went to a few games with Rob up at Celtic. In fact, I got Victor's tickets in the players' box a few times. And he's like quiet assassin. He'll go about under the radar, gets these great tackles in, tracks back. Nothing too fancy, nothing too elaborate. But you need those guys. Not the guy I would go watch. They're the guys you want to get the ball, play it to the likes of Ericsson.
But he does. I think he does the right simple thing more often than not, which is what a guy we're about to go on and talk about said was the essence of the game.
Exactly.
Even if it's a simple thing, do it right every time,
Yep.
and then the beautiful stuff will flow from that.
Yeah. Which Ajax, that was very much the philosophy. It was nothing fancy. Everything, keep it basic, keep it simple, do your number one job. Once you do that, and once you're confident you're going to do it, then you do the fancy bit. Then you go past your player, then you take a chance. But up until then, everybody has got their job to do.
You've still got a wee turn of pace because you just about got away from your marker there, but I don't give up that easily. So before you nip off into the Ajax distance, I can't stop without being unfair to you. So you've got the power to flick a switch, and the semi-final will go the way that you decide. It's in your hands.
Oh, definitely Tottenham. every day of the week. A few people have asked me that, and I think, oh, Tottenham. It's like I was there when I was a kid. It was my first club. It was my debut. It was where everything it was a great time in my life. Left school, joined a professional club, and I was there for 5 years. It's a long time, day in, day out. I've been back over the years, kind of keep in touch with everybody's kind of left now, but you keep in touch, and it's like your first love. It's always the one that sticks in the mind.
This question came in for our lovely sponsors at Bet365. If you could pluck one player from your Spurs side and drop him into the team to play Ajax in the Champions League this week and next week, who the hell would it be?
Glenn, a lot of people say, oh, he was never the fittest, he was never the quickest, but technically he could always change a game like that.
So your guy's Glenn.
Yeah.
Your guy that you lift from that team and you put in this team.
Every day of the week.
Is Glenn.
Every day of the week.
It's hard for me to try and explain to our listenership the beauty, the romance of Ajax, because for me, and my first my first sort of falling head over heels in love memory is just slightly before 74 World Cup, which is what you said in our little introduction. But it's still Cruyff,
Right.
because the really few games you had on the television then included the European Cup final, and they won consecutively 3 times. And also, I'm not sure that I watched all of them in colour, and for some reason,
I don't even think they're in colour.
I'm not so sure. You're right, but branded in my mind somehow is the old Ajax red and white strip, which is very different from what it is now. It was like 2 giant white strips and 1 red down the middle, and somehow or other, somebody in my neighbourhood when we were growing up had one, and it just looked unbelievable. There are certain strips that are truly iconic, and even if somebody else has got the same black and white stripes as you, it's, for example, it's always Juve, it's not Notts County or whatever. And that was one of those strips. So, but if you try and explain when the leaving of Spurs is a bit unfair and it's sore because you've been injured and Chrissy Waddle's coming in, another guest on this series, who could play a bit. But if, you know, in those days, Johan Cruyff didn't phone up and say, "Do you want to come out and play?"
I can't remember who phoned me, but if it was him, I would have remembered. So it wasn't him that phoned.
Can we say it was? Because if you don't remember, I
Say
think
what you want, but I honestly
if you don't
can't
remember,
remember.
I think we can say that it was.
I can't remember.
Also, he's the type of guy who could have glided into a phone call and glided out, and you never knew he was there.
I remember
he was
when
that
a guy phoned up with this funny Dutch accent. And
it was Johan then.
I thought it was my mate. Till I clicked, I thought, oh, jeez, oh. And as you see, one of the things, the strip's classy. You got that beautiful strip. The first thing when I went there, you're expecting, like you've been to Parkhead, you've been to Tottenham, you've been to Arsenal, all these stadiums, massive, massive. Every time we trained with Tottenham, there's maybe 50 guys, youth team, reserves. You go to Ajax, tiny little stadium in a little housing estate, trained, there was only like 19 professionals. Nobody else trains with Ajax. Is Ajax. The rest, they're all part-timers, come in at night time. 19 players, the little stadium, tucked away in the housing estate. It's kind of underwhelming. You'd think it was European, won the European Cup 3 times, Johan Cruyff. And even when I went there, Van Basten, I knew him, but he wasn't as known. He wasn't Marco Van Basten, the Frank Rijkaard, Royal Koeman. These names were kind of pretty much unknown. First went there, I was kind of like, it's not Tottenham. And it's not got the big fancy stadium. Stadium was only a little stand, like kind of 20 deep. I kind of thought it was a training stadium or something, because the training fields were awful.
Were they quite open? I seem to remember that they weren't all that fenced off, and there was certainly, I've seen lots of footage of Johan arriving to training on a bicycle, and you know, it looked like not quite a public park, but not far off it.
It was the training fields. There were like 3 all joined in together. They were terrible condition. For the whole 3 years I was there, it was just shocking. It was the stadium changed there for your training. Pitches were there, and the games were there as well. And it was all small, compact, beautiful. The pitch was lovely. On
the actual match day
the
stadium.
pitch itself was immaculate, but the stadium was tiny. But when it was full, it was great atmosphere, but just small. And the first thing I thought was, geez, it's not Tottenham. It's the Ajax name is the thing that's big. And anywhere you go, you can kind of feel it. Obviously, Cruyff gives that a lot of kind of gravitas with his background. But they've got such a big name. Somebody asked me last week, did you feel like you're going to a bigger club? And when I first arrived there, I felt like I was going to a non-league team or something. It was so small when I thought, geez, it's just it.
Given that, you know, when we began, you talked about seeing that outrageous clockwork orange side of 74 Holland, starring Rensenbrink and Neeskens and Cruyff and Wim Jansen, all these kind of wonderful footballers. But Johan stood out, and then suddenly he's your coach. But at that stage, he's only been coaching a season. He's only been in charge 1 season. He's retired from Ajax. They wouldn't pay him. He goes to Feyenoord to stick it up and plays for them for a season, wins the cup, wins the league, player of the season, aged about 36 or 37.
Yeah.
He's had 1 coaching season with Ajax, and quite a volatile season before he signs you. You are part of his rebuilding of Ajax. So I'd imagine that when you come along, he'd have paid quite close attention to you. I suppose what I'd really like to know is what your first impressions of him were, what his behaviour was like, whether it felt a little bit overwhelming to be in his presence or not.
A couple of years previous, Tottenham had played Feyenoord, and he played at White Hart Lane, so he wasn't that long finished playing. The fact that he'd only coached for 1 year, that was irrelevant. Everybody knew Cruyff had a football brain. He knew what he was doing. It was just a matter of time before he shone. I didn't think to myself at the time, as you say, I'm pretty much unknown about Ajax going over there. I didn't realise he was kind of building a team. I knew Marco Van Basten and Johnny Van Skip, basically for the youth team playing against Holland. I kind of knew them to say hello to, and I knew them that way. I didn't realise Marco was this next big superstar. Found it very quickly, right enough. It wasn't long before you realised the kind of lay of the land. Over in Holland, everybody knew about Marco and Frank Rijkaard and Ronald Koeman. But over in this country, there's still pretty much unknown at the time. There was no Dutch football. I could play a game over there. Nobody would know here. It wasn't like, well, on Sky, the bit coming under, played a game. So you felt you were kind of going off the radar. You felt like you were kind of off the mainstream English football thing where everybody knows each other, everybody knows what's going on. I'd kind of jumped ship.
And I don't know if you would have considered yourself then as an inside forward or a winger. But certainly, when you played wide, you're like Steve Archibald told me, there are certain players in my career where I'm still waiting for their cross today. But he said Ali's range of distribution, he said it was a bit like having Hoddle on the left wing. Presumably, the first thing you look to do is to find Van Basten, because Van Basten then is their 9. And Ajax were playing in their numbered system then. It was a 4-3-3, I guess.
Yep.
And you'd have been the 11.
Yep.
And therefore, the first thing you do to show your worth or to connect with the team, I presume, is to look for Marco Van Basten's head.
Probably.
Or have I got that wrong?
No, this reminded me of a wee story. The first time I went there, I played 3 games in a trot.
Cruyff gave you an opportunity and said, come and show yourself, is that right?
Yeah. He said, we've got 3 games, I want you to come across, we'll see, I'll see you, you'll see us, we'll see if we like each other and we'll see what happens. So I went over, played the first game, I remember I got changed. I was kind of looking forward to it. I didn't know this guy was Frank Rijkaard, I didn't know this guy. But he says, look, it's going to be a lot of attacking. He says, but when you get the ball, he says, don't always look to cross it to the far post and near post. He says, look to cut it back a lot, which is an unusual thing. So during the game, I cut 3 or 4 balls back, hard into the D. And this little blonde guy came up, hit it every time. Poof, poof, top corner, top corner. And I remember after the game, I said, that little blonde guy can play, eh? And didn't realise it was Ronald Koeman. But in the space of the 2-3 games I played, I think he scored about 8 goals, all from the outside of the box, all in the top corner.
Most of which served up by his new friendly Scot on the wing.
It made me look good. It made me look great.
Or maybe you'd made it easy for him. Let's be big about this.
It was an easy game. It was against these like lower division teams, and it was they weren't the best, and they gave you a chance to kind of show, and it was perfect for me. And you've got Marco Van Basten, you've got Johnny Bosman up front.
Bosman was another good centre forward.
Yeah, he was fantastic in the air as well. And you got Ronald Koeman. Jeez, it was a pleasure. And as I say, they made me look good.
For those who never saw Marco play or Ronald play, and now only know of them because of record books or pictures or Koeman the manager, describe seeing Marco Van Basten as an fellow Ajax player for the first time. Describe what he looked like, sounded like, behaved like. Draw a wee picture of Marco Van Basten.
If you walked into a typical Dutch changing room, it was very quiet. An English changing room, there's a lot of vibes, a lot of guys shouting and swearing and vibing up. Dutch changing rooms, totally different. Marco was a kind of exception. He was a bit more like the English type player. He was a bit more talkative, a bit more having a few laughs and things like that. Very tall, big guy. I don't think people realise he looked tall and thin, but he was a big, strong boy. And the one thing I always remember about every game with Ajax, it didn't matter how much pressure you were under, it didn't matter how tough the game was. If you could get that ball to Marco, even if he was up there on his own, he would slow it down, he would let everybody catch their breath, everybody could get up, everybody could regroup. In the meantime, he's maybe took 2 guys on and scored, but he would always do something. And it was like when I played in my under 14 school games, I was head and shoulders above anybody, so it was like, give Ali the ball, give Ali the ball. Marco was like that in professional football. No matter who you played, give Marco the ball and he can do it. It's almost like as if he was playing against schoolboys.
It's an astonishing description. You said it that to me, watching him in the little, still relatively little television clips you could see then, apart from international games, he did seem tall, maybe not slender, but I wouldn't have said necessarily he was built. Yet that, what you've described now, where the ball would go in, if it was at his feet, because he didn't look like a rocket, but if you let him turn,
he was fast.
He'd just go away from maybe 2-3 players.
He had those big long legs, deceptive. Same with Glenn Hoddle, it wasn't fast, but he had those big long legs, so one shimmy of the body, and he's 5 yards away from you. And Marco, it doesn't matter where in the box he was, how he received the ball, in the air, right foot, left foot, he always thought, we've got a chance here. And the amount of times he scored goals from situations, you thought, man, how did he do that?
How's this happened?
And it did that. It reminded me of when I played when I was a schoolboy. You could take guys on, and you think, I'll take the 3 of them on. He would do that
But against the best in the world.
And exactly the best in the world, and he'd do it every week.
He had a fiery, I don't know if you ever saw evidence of this, but Johan's written about how they had a fiery relationship with each other. It's almost as if Johan poked him, he wanted more out of him, he wanted him to be maybe meaner, I don't know quite. It wasn't all buddy-buddy between the two of them.
I think anything that went on, it was probably just to encourage him to do better, because they were very, Marco was definitely his blue-eyed boy.
Is that right?
Which was tough, because Cruyff never gave away a lot of love.
No.
He wasn't the easiest guy to get on with, and he was very matter-of-fact, very blunt. I probably missed out on a lot because he was maybe talking Dutch, and I wouldn't kind of pick up on the vibe. But they definitely got on him, Marco, Johnny Van Skip, a bit closer than the rest of them. And if he said it, anything he said, there was a meaning behind it. Cruyff never opened his mouth with it, some deep thinking philosophy behind it. That was the type of guy he'd do. He'd say something to you and walk away. He'd leave you with it. So like, think about that. And you think, what is that? So sometimes he maybe didn't mean anything, but you think, well, that must mean something. But he's the way of explaining things on the field were just very matter of fact. Very simple. Do this, do that, bum, bum, and walk away. You think, geez, it makes it sound so easy. And for him, maybe it just came so easy.
What was your relationship with him?
As I said, he wasn't a guy who was...
Not touchy-feely?
No, he wasn't putting his arm around you, come on now. He was not that type of guy. He was kind of man management. Not my style. I like to be kind of looked after, encouraged, pretty cold, pretty calculated. That's what I want you to do. That's what I want you to do. If you don't do it, you don't play with it. So get on with it. And I see you've got the language barrier as well. I was only young, so it's not as if I would go up, I had the confidence to go up and them and say, oh, 74 World Cup, taught me nothing like that. It's very, very rare that you would get in a situation where you would just be sitting next to him and you could have a chat. There was always somebody around him. There was always something going on. So it wasn't very buddy like or nothing.
Another thing that I'm inquisitive about is that of the three that eventually moved to Milan, Ruud wasn't in your side, but Frank and Marco were. I often believe that Rijkaard's the one that gets the least quality analysis as a footballer. He's probably the one that's most underestimated, and you can see why, because in each of their ways there was a point where Marco or Ruud Gullit were number one player in the world, and dominant. But Rijkaard was pretty extraordinary footballer, also a stroppy guy. And he told me once, when he was a Barca manager, I interviewed him at length, and we talked. I was really obsessed with sort of street football in Amsterdam, and that's the idea of playing on the cobbles, about how aggressive it was, about how skilled it was. And he said, yeah, we would play street football, say 6v6 or 8v8 on the street. And he said, then when one team had won, one team had lost, the best player in the losing team, the best player in the winning team went 1-on-1 against each other. And he just looked at me and he went, and it was kill or be killed. I thought, I like that attitude. And is that describing the Frank Rijkaard you saw?
There's a kind of good analogy of Ajax itself. When I first went there, first week of training, you expect Ajax, Holland, Cruyff, you expect it to all be ticky-tacky. Not at all. This was get your shin pads on, get your ankle strappings on, roll your socks up. Training was 100%. There was no easy days. There was no let's have a wee five-a-side, you go and goals, Al. None of that. Every day was dog eat dog. And because you've done it every day, when it comes to a game, these guys, they're ready. That's all they do. Cruyff had a thing where when you went to training, the first thing you do at training is get tired. He would get the fitness coach, take you away for half an hour, he'd run your arse off. You would run, and you're like, geez, I've got a game in tomorrow. You keep on running, you'd be knackered, and then you go, right, you get handed over to Cruyff and you coach. Because he says, if you play a game, you're always tired, so you have to train when you're tired. So there was not one training session that didn't start off with a full-on 100%, I'm going to kill you run. And Frank, he was super fit. Marco was big. Frank Rijkaard, his thighs were like tree trunks.
Beast.
He was a beast of a guy. You're saying he was kind of stroppy. I got on very well with him. I thought he was a kind of similar, kind of Englishy type player. He wanted to have a laugh. He put buckets of water above the shower door for you coming in. He kept himself to himself, but he was strong. He was athletic. Again, deceptive because he was big. You've got Marco up front. You've got him in the middle. Solid through the middle of the field. He was a great. I love Frank. He was one of my favourites.
But there's nobody on this planet, including his remaining family, who adores Cruyff more than I do. Any of the Ajax sides where I think he probably had three coaches, different coaches leading him to the... He hated being worked hard. He used to skive off, hide in the woods, nick a fly fag. the last thing he did in the world was run at training, and
he still never ran. He was great at training. Keep ball. You could still tell he was a great player. I know he rubbed Frank up the wrong way. Even in Dutch, you could kind of see rolling his eyes a few times. Frank had his ideas, and I think he was just getting annoyed that it was Cruyff's way or no way. And he was a super fit guy. We'd done that beep test. I always remember that. He outlasted the beep, and at the end he wasn't even sweating. I remember I sat next to him on a cycle, doing a cycle test. I gave up after 10 minutes. He just kept going, and he kept going, and he kept going. He was just a huge man. Great guy to have in your team. Every time he was in your team, you thought, again, like you've got Marco, you've got him, you've got a chance.
It's good. Well, in that case, it's good that you got on with him. I think because if you
got on very well. I know what you mean by saying.
In the end, he buggered off to Zaragoza. If you think back in his career, he went right up here to Ajax, Zaragoza.
Aye.
He only spent a season and then went to Milan and did what he did and was. I think in European terms, he's a true modern great as a footballer. But if I talk about that, there were spells you mentioned, Johnny Bosman, Van Skip, you mentioned Marco, but Bergkamp was coming through, Aaron Winter was coming through, Muhren was still there.
Arnold was great.
Ronald and Frank. Apart from the word about Arnold was great, you smiled. Why?
I used to get changed every morning. I used to get changed, and it was me, Arnold Muhren, Marco Van Basten. Because Ronald Koeman had left, he had the number 8 shirt, so I got his peg in the changing room. So I was number 8, which was me, Arnold Muhren, and Marco Van Basten. So at the time you don't think it. At the time it doesn't. You're there.
No,
you're there to do the job and that. But to be a left-sided player, left winger, Arnold Muhren's the perfect man to have behind you.
Why?
He just, nothing fancy, get it. He goes, Al, I'm going to give it to you. And that's what he done. Got the ball turned, give it to me. Got the ball turned, give it to me. Every time.
People who've forgotten about him, just tell us a little bit, because he's come through, the Dutch school. Bobby Robson spots him, and Frans Thijssen takes him to Ipswich. They win a European trophy at Ipswich. And he's come back to Ajax. And presumably for you, bedding in as still a relative youngster, he speaks probably better English than the majority of the rest of the squad. He lived in the British culture.
He knew the British vibe. He knew the way I would approach a game. It kind of made me very much at home. He used to bring in English papers for me. He knew a lot of guys that I knew, and to play with him, he was just so calm, fit as a fiddle. He was 36 at the time, but fit as a fiddle. He could run up, down all day long. Technically, he was great as well. He was kind of slow, but technically he was very gifted, and he would just never lose the ball. And you knew if Arnold got it, you were getting it next. Nothing fancy. He wasn't looking for these killer balls. Give it to him.
It's funny you say about slow. My memory of watching him, maybe particularly at Man United and Ipswich, was that the world stood still around him. It was as if...
It makes everybody look like they're... that's exactly what... And he was still the same. He kind of never moved fast, but you never got near him. And if you did get near him, he would just kind of glide away from you.
That's gorgeous, isn't it? That's a gorgeous talent.
As if he was on coasters. It was weird. You thought, I don't know how he does that. And he was old, but he was one of the fittest guys there. Just an all-round nice guy.
So I've named some names that you having to compete with or play with. Winter maybe is a more pragmatic talent, but he had a great career. Cruyff tried to sign him subsequently for Football Club Barcelona. It didn't happen. Who should we talk about that we've missed? Stanley Menzo would have been the principal goalkeeper, I think. You dropped the names of the Boer twins, and Bergkamp was emerging. Again...
The first day I signed with Ajax, I signed on the same day as Danny Blind and Jan Wouters. So the three of us signed the same day. I stayed in the same hotel as Danny Blind for a long time. Kind of knew him pretty well. That was the kind of team. It was only the second year. Now and again, Dennis would come in for training. As I said, he was about a year younger than me. And if you're not in the first team, you're not in the first team, you just don't train. You come in at night time, train with a different team. And he was a right winger at the time. So some games we'd play in the reserves, I'd be left wing, he'd be right wing. Very nice guy, I got on well with Dennis. When you talk about Stanley Menzo, that was one of the first things I realised. When I got there, Stanley wasn't a goalkeeper. Stanley was a sweeper. That's how we used to work it out. So any time we pushed up the field, Stanley would come right up the field with us. So if the ball got knocked over the defence, it wasn't the defenders, it was Stanley's ball.
So for those who've just bought your dummy, he actually was the goalkeeper, but he played like a sweeper.
When it came to the tactics, he was we spoke to him as if he was a sweeper.
A 6, say, for example. No, not a 6 in the Ajax system. I suppose a 5 or a...
Yeah, 5 or a libero. He would play deep.
Had you ever seen that before? I almost think you almost can't have seen that before.
It wasn't a done thing in England. It was
no.
Get the ball, hump it up the park, or get back in your goal.
I think if a keeper had come to the edge of his penalty box, it'd have been a war crime.
And he was
very Ferrari.
Exactly, and he was very comfortable with his feet.
Yeah.
If you got it, if somebody rushed him, he wouldn't panic. He wouldn't go. He would just sidestep, look to play it out. That was a kind of new thing, and from that's where everything started.
So literally, if the ball comes long, and you're all quite, because you would have probably held either a 3-4-3 or a 4-3-3 formation, I would imagine, under Cruyff at Ajax. But Stanley would have been so high up that if he traps the ball and takes it down, he literally then is beginning the game again as an out-and-out sweeper.
He wouldn't panic. Keepers like to give the ball away and get right back in their goal. He wouldn't panic. If he had to go right, had to go left, he would, and then play it out from the back without any kind of hassle, without anybody kind of panicking. So that was a new thing. That was pretty radical at the time, but it kind of seemed obvious. He was very comfortable with his feet right enough, and I just thought, well, it's because he's good with his feet. I know they're trying to do it as much as they can now, but they're still not. Stanley was great at it. He was fantastic at it. A lot of the play started off from him.
You've, again, with some gestures, you demonstrated with gestures, because even if you're a keeper who's very good with your feet, it's also about your mentality. You have to be ice cold up here. If you're on your own and maybe your back 4 or your back 3 haven't moved properly to give you the out ball, you are still getting charged by 1 or 2. And you might be technically good, but you have to be ice cold up in your brain to handle that, and evidently Stanley was.
The Dutch guys, it was one thing I noticed as well, even with the youngsters, we used to always see the little kids come in and train at the window, especially the Amsterdammers, especially the guys that played with Ajax. They've got this self-confidence that every football player should have. You need confidence, but these guys, I thought, these guys like that because they're with Ajax, or is this
chicken and egg, as I expect them, because they're like that.
Exactly. They had this confidence, and when we used to go to a game, I always remember walking in and getting every game. I felt like we were already 1-0 up, because they exuded this Ajax vibe, invincible. We know we're good. We are good. We're going to show you we're good. Not in an arrogant way. Bored they're not arrogant, but they had this self-confidence that was, if you're a football player, it's a must, and it's a tough thing to tell somebody, but everybody seemed to have it. Even the kids, they come in and train, and I look at the kids, I thought, even they wee shitbags have got this cocky arrogance on the ball. And then I remember the Boer twins came to start training. They were only young. They weren't sitting at the back taking it easy. They were loud, they were up front, they were direct and thing. I thought, what's going on here?
They never changed.
They were just, as I say, they came across very arrogant, very cocksure of themselves. But everybody at Ajax did. Everybody that walked through the doors, they had this kind of self-belief.
One of the things you have to avoid in my industry is that stories get retold and retold and retold, so they become a groove in the ground, and it's just so... What was this sort of inner sanctum? Cruyff phones Souness phones Cruyff, Ali Dick moves to... What's the truth of that?
You know what, I don't even remember where I heard that. I'd been at Ajax maybe 6 months, but somebody told me, very matter of fact, the reason you're here is Ajax wanted to sign Davy Cooper. I had just been asked to... Souness had phoned me looking to sign me for Rangers. A lot of problems with me going to the wrong school and things like that.
Parenthesis, would you have gone?
I never got to that stage. I would have been the first Catholic. This was like 2 years before Mo Johnson, so it's kind of doubtful if it would have came about. But he was already thinking about it. And the story, again, I don't know where he headed from. He wanted to sign Davy Cooper as his left-sided player. Souness says, I'm not selling him, but I've got a guy we've just been trying to sign. You should take a look at him because we can't get him. And that's how I ended up there.
It's a good way to get there.
Sounds believable.
In that case, let's just say it's a definite truth.
It sounds believable.
You win your second European medal, and although the experience in Greece, Olympiacos is where the injury comes, I think.
I think it was the second or third round. We played, who did we play? I can't remember. I think we played Dundalk or something. We played somebody.
Yeah, you beat them well.
And then we played Olympiacos. I got injured and almost made the final. I was about a month short of the final. So I would have definitely played at some point, I'm sure. As a game, we didn't have big squads if I hadn't got injured in the first place, I was a first team regular. It's only then they kind of brought in other guys to cover. So if I wasn't playing, I would have definitely came on at some point.
Be a part of the campaign, you know.
Well, as I say, Ajax, you're there or you're not there. There's no. I say there's got a squad of 20. That's a squad of 20. They don't chop and change it. Only if somebody gets injured, then they'll bring somebody else in. But that is the squad that goes all the way through, which is different from England. England, you could take from anybody for the youth team, the reserves. You could pick anybody. Ajax had this kind of 20 guys, 5 coaches, so it was intense, and that was the way. It was always the same kind of boys, the same team, the same thing. So I'd like to think I would have started the game.
But that's your medal nonetheless, and you've got an experience of what it's like then in De Meer and Ajax for them to win a European trophy. Was there a sense still, because Ajax, that, you know, when you're winning it, it's only 10, 12 years after their last European Cup. It's not a massive, were they like, yeah, this is what we do, we win European trophies, or was there an unleashing of relief around those that supported the club in the city? You know, we've got one.
I know that when we played in the earlier rounds, we expected to get to the final. As an Ajax thing, you just expect to win every game. It was a different vibe, a different way of approaching things. The lead up to games in England, there was a great vibe. Before a game in a change room, everybody's hyper, everybody's up. In Holland, it's quiet. They'll sit, read the programme. You won't come in an hour before the game, you'll come in 3 hours before the game. They have to have this build-up. They slowly build themselves up to a game. England, you can switch on like that. You can go watch, and I know the guys used to watch the racing. They'd watch the 1:45 race at Kempton, finish, they'd come down at 2 and they'd switch on. Holland had never done that. Holland, for a game that started at 4 o'clock, you'd come in at 12 and you'd sit and you'd read them, and it was like just
boring.
Different, and everything, they had to have this build-up, a slow build-up. It wasn't all dynamic. And again, the celebrations are a wee bit the same. It kind of wasn't all kind of crazy, kind of controlled. It was done with thought. You know, they were way talking about your pre-match meal and your after-dinner care, after games drinking water rather than drinking beer.
They were already ahead, were they?
Already doing that. 3-4 days before a game, they weren't drinking alcohol. They were drinking fizzy water. They were eating pasta a couple of days before game, and I'm like, geez, all right. I'm not going to do it, but go for it. They were way, way ahead of us.
I suspect it'll be different. If they disappoint you by beating Spurs in this Champions League semi-final, I suspect the atmosphere will be so different, because for a long time now, it's felt obvious that Ajax would just about, maybe with Celtic, I don't know, be the premium club that the traditionalists would argue, if the Champions League has left these two behind, these two iconic clubs, each of whom has lifted the Celtic had 2 finals, Ajax won 4 times. If the Champions League has left these 2 clubs behind, then something's wrong, I think is what people would have felt. And now Ajax have, I think, shocked maybe even themselves by the way in which they beat Real Madrid, you know, which is knocking in 4 at the Bernabeu, and then knocking out a side that a lot of people might have put Juventus because of the repeat triumph in Italy, Ronaldo being added, good defence, albeit one of them was missing against Ajax. They've shocked people. So I think it'll go absolutely crazy in Amsterdam if they win this time.
Since I was there, it's all changed. As I say, there was none of this TV hype that kind of got everything going a week before the game and talking about players. There was none of that. It was so much different. At Ajax, we used to, the big games you'd play at the Olympic Stadium. So you'd play the home games that were small crowds at the Boer. Then you'd play at the Olympic Stadium, it was kind of big and open. There weren't massive crowds, and the hype just wasn't like it is nowadays. Ajax is still a small, they're not, even you mentioned in the Celtic, you go to Celtic and you look at Celtic, it's massive. Ajax still, they keep things tight. I was there a few years ago.
This was in the arena now, you've been...
This is in the arena now, but still, the staff, the people working for Ajax, there's not dozens and dozens of them. There's a very small handful of people organising things. They just do it very well, they do it their way, and they do it with a very, very small squad. They get the pick of all the best players in Holland, no doubt, and once you get them, they put this academy system in place. I still think of it as a small club. It's not...
I understand, it's not a big corporate giant, it's not massive on marketing, it doesn't feel like walking into a mega organisation.
Not at all. Things are very kind of compact. They do it very, very well. They have got the pick of all the players in Holland, right enough, which is big boost. They don't have, well, obviously they've got competitors, but they seem to get the best players.
They do, and I don't know, because it might be you haven't had the time to watch them too closely this season. Maybe you've seen bits and pieces.
Not much, not much.
But like the idea, does it attract you, the fact that, you know, long before he died, Johan went back and fought for control of Ajax with Louis van Gaal, went to court and installed Van der Sar as the sort of general manager, and Bergkamp he put in, and Wim Jonk and Davids who went away. But he also put in Overmars as the sort of market manager, the transfer market manager. And now, and Ten Hag was kind of, the current coach was kind of instructed by Johan in his latter months. You know, doesn't it feel different to you, good to you, that what we're seeing now, the fact that Frenkie de Jong is a massive talent, who's going to go to Barcelona, as Johan did. De Ligt, the centre half, is going to go to Barcelona. They've revitalised players like Tadic, who didn't quite make it, and then Neres. There's a whole list of names. It does feel like it's not just a romantic story, you know, the Johan Cruyff club. Johan Cruyff's influence is really strongly there, because he repopulated the club with his ideas and people that would enact his ideas.
You can always feel him. Anywhere you go in Amsterdam, anything to do with Ajax, Cruyff is lingering in the background, always. His name always comes up in conversation, his thought process, the things he does, it's always going to be there. You can't kind of separate the two of them now. I think things go in waves. Football, countries, places, teams, they have little waves, and I think now Ajax are on a crest of a wave again. I think it maybe last, and then it'll die down again. There'll be no great Dutch players for a while.
The players are going to be sold off, so it will, you know.
And the one thing about Ajax, they know they're a feeder club. They know they're a club that are going to sell on. They'll nurture youngsters and they'll sell them on. They've no qualms about that. They do it very well, and it doesn't matter if you're 66 or 16. If they think you're good enough, they'll get you in the first team. They'll give you that experience, and they'll give you the experience of being the captain, of playing big games, big stadiums, and they'll give it to all the youngsters, and they'll bring these guys on very, very quickly. And it doesn't matter what age you are, you're kind of right in the deep end right away.
Okay, one more from Bet365. Yes, our lovely supportive sponsor. In part one, we asked you to pick the player you take from the Tottenham team to play in this year's Champions League semi-final against Ajax, and you chose Glenn Hoddle. This time, we're flipping it. Which teammate from your time with Ajax would you put in the current team to face Spurs?
And I want Ajax to win.
You can't choose the third choice keeper.
You can't go any further than Marco Van Basten. The guy's head and shoulders above anything these days. They talk about Mo Salah and no chance. I think Marco Van Basten's 100 times better than these guys. He's got so much more. So if we popped him in any team, it'd make the team better.
It's a good choice, and Hoddle and Van Basten. I don't think anybody anywhere is going to argue with you.
No, it's a no-brainer, that one.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I hope the two games that we're going to watch live up to your chat. You've described your fellow players well. You've given a warmth to the football that I watched and loved when I was growing up. But even though there wasn't wall-to-wall coverage then of me being able to watch you, our country had an extraordinary talent in the things that you could do. I think you should maybe be a little bit more bullish about it, because it's all true.
It's not my style.
Well, you've got style. Pleasure.
Nice one.